Master Huang Po. As some of you know, I'm taking a course on the writings of Huang Po through Buddha Dharma University, and I found him to be just illuminatingly brilliant. So I hope that that will give you something to think about. It's certainly given me a lot to think about. But as I do each night, I would like to begin by paying homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Again, thank you, friends, for joining me tonight. As I mentioned, I wanted to do a little bit of reading from the Chan master or Zen master Huang Po. He's an ancient Zen master from about 1000 of the Common Era, from ancient China. And I find his writings to just be brilliantly illuminating regarding Zen and the Zen approach to seeking our original mind, our Buddha nature, those things that are inherent in Buddhist meditative practice. So, excuse me. So, if you'll allow me, I'm going to read a little bit to you because it's this particular section that I just think is brilliant. So it begins here at number 26. If you guys can see that with me here. I think I can make this a little bit bigger and easier for everyone to see. How about you hear my child screaming in the background? But, you know, part of being a householder. So here we go. We're going to start with 26 because this is the one that I think is just so instructive. The question that was posed to Huang Po by his students was this: how then does a man accomplish this comprehension of his own mind? Now, I will backtrack just a little bit in that Huang Po's teaching that is that enlightenment is in your own mind, that the Buddha is your own mind. That's not intended to mean Sakyamuni Buddha is your own mind, but your Buddha nature, you're the Buddha that rests inside you, yearning to be free, if you would, is in your own mind. So that is your own mind, not in your mind. That is your mind. So here we go. How then does a man accomplish this comprehension of his own mind? That which asks the question is your own mind. But if you were to remain quiescent and to refrain from the smallest mental activity, its substance would be seen as a void. You would find it formless, occupying no point in space and falling neither into the category of existence nor into that of non-existence. Because it is imperceptible, Bodhidharma said, mind, which is our real nature, is the unbegotten and indestructible womb. In response to circumstances, it transforms itself into phenomena. For the sake of convenience, we speak of mind as the intelligence, but when it does not respond to circumstances, it cannot be spoken of in such dualistic terms as existence or non-existence. Besides, even when engaged in creating objects in response to causality, it is still imperceptible. If you know this and rest tranquilly in nothingness, then you are indeed following the way of the Buddhas. Therefore does the sutra say, develop a mind which rests on no thing whatever. Every one of the sentient beings bound to the wheel of alternating life and death is recreated from the karma of his own desires. Endlessly, their hearts remain bound to the 6 states of existence, thereby involving them in all sorts of sorrow and pain. Ching Ming says there are people with minds like those of apes who are very hard to teach, people who need all sorts of precepts and doctrines with which to force their hearts into submission. And so when thoughts arise, all sorts of dharmas follow, but they vanish with thought cessation. We can see from this that every sort of dharma is but a creation of mind, and all kinds of beings, humans, devas, sufferers in hell, asuras, and all comprised within the 6 forms of life. Each one of them is mind created. If only you would learn how to achieve a state of non-intellection, immediately the chain of causation would snap. Give up those erroneous thoughts leading to false distinctions. There is no self and no other. There is no wrong desire, no anger, no hatred, no love, no victory, no failure. Only renounce the error of intellectual or conceptual thought processes, and your nature will exhibit its pristine purity. For this alone is the way to attain enlightenment, to observe the Dharma, the law, to become a Buddha and all the rest. Unless you understand this, the whole of your great learning, your painful efforts to advance, your austerities of diet and clothing will not help you to a knowledge of your own mind. All such practices must be termed fallacious, for any of them will lead to your rebirth among demons, enemies of the truth, or among the crude nature spirits. What end is served by pursuits like those? Chi Kung says, our bodies are the creations of our own minds, but how can one expect to gain such knowledge from books? If only you could comprehend the nature of your own mind and put an end to discriminatory thought, there would be naturally no room for even a grain of error to arise. Qing Ming expressed this in a verse. Just spread out a mat for reclining quite flat. When thoughts tied to a bed, like a sick man growing worse, all karma will cease, all fancies disperse. That is what is meant by Bodhi. As it is, so long as your mind is subject to the slightest movement of thought, you will remain engulfed in the error of taking ignorant and enlightened for separate states. This error excuse me, this error will persist regardless of your vast knowledge of the Mahayana or of your ability to pass through the 4 grades of sainthood and the 10 stages of progress leading to enlightenment. For all these pursuits belong to what is ephemeral. Even the most strenuous of your efforts is doomed to fail, just as an arrow shot never so high into the air must inevitably fall spent to the ground. So, in spite of them, you are certain to find yourselves back on the wheel of life and death. Indulging in such practices implies your failure to understand the Buddha's real meaning. Surely the endurance of so much unnecessary suffering is nothing but a gigantic error, isn't it? Chi Kung says elsewhere, if you do not meet with a teacher able to transcend the worlds, you will go on swallowing the medicine of the Mahayana Dharma quite in vain. Were you now to practice keeping your minds motionless at all times, whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying, concentrating entirely upon the goal of no thought creation, no duality, no reliance on others, and no attachments, just allowing all things to take their course the whole day long, as though you were too ill to bother, unknown to the world, innocent of any urge to be known or unknown to others, with your minds like blocks of stone that mend no holes, then all the dharmas would penetrate your understanding through and through. In a little while, you will find yourselves firmly unattached. Thus, for the first time in your lives, you would discover your reactions to phenomena decreasing, and ultimately, you would pass beyond the triple world, and people would say that a Buddha had appeared in the world. Pure and passionless knowledge implies putting an end to the ceaseless flow of thoughts and images, for in that way you stop creating the karma that leads to rebirth, whether as gods or men or as sufferers in hell. Once every sort of mental process has ceased, not a particle of karma is formed. Then, Even in this life, your minds and bodies become those of a being completely liberated. Supposing that this does not result in freeing you immediately from further rebirths, at the very least, you will be assured of rebirth in accordance with your own wishes. The sutra declares bodhisattvas are re-embodied into whatsoever forms they desire. But when they suddenly but were they suddenly to lose the power of keeping their minds free from conceptual thought, attachment to form would drag them back into the phenomenal world, and each of those forms would create for them a demon's karma. With the practices of the Pure Land Buddhists, it is also thus, for all these practices are productive of karma. Hence, we may call them Buddha hindrances, as they would obstruct your mind. The chain of causation would also grapple you fast, dragging you back into the state of those yet unliberated. Hence, all dharma, such as those purporting to lead to the attainment of Bodhi, possess no reality. The words of Gautama Buddha were intended merely as efficacious expedients for leading men out of the darkness of worse ignorance. It was as though one pretended yellow leaves were gold to stop the flow of child's tears. Samyak Sambodhi is another name for the realization that there are no valid dharmas. Once you understand this, of what use are such trifles to you? According harmoniously with the conditions of your present lives, you should go on as opportunities arise, reducing the store of old karma laid up in previous lives, and above all, you must avoid building up fresh store of retribution for yourselves. Mind is filled with radiant clarity, so cast away the darkness of your old concepts. Ching Ming says, rid yourselves of everything. The sentence in the Lotus Sutra concerning a whole 20 years spent in the shoveling away of manure symbolizes the necessity of driving from your minds whatever tends to the formation of concepts. In another passage, the same sutra identifies the pile of dung which has been carted away with metaphysics and sophistry. Thus, the womb of the Tathagatas is intrinsically a voidness and silence, containing no individualized dharmas of any sort or kind, and therefore, says the sutra, the entire realm of all the Buddhas are equally void. Though others may talk of the way of the Buddhas as something to be reached by various pious practices and by sutra study, you must have nothing to do with such ideas. A perception, sudden as blinking, that subject and object are one will lead to a deeply mysterious, worldless understanding, and by this understanding you will awake to the truth of Zen. When you happen upon someone who has no understanding, you must claim to know nothing. He may be delighted by his discovery of some way to enlightenment, yet if you allow yourselves to be persuaded by him, you will experience no delight at all, but suffer both sorrow and disappointment. What have such thoughts as his to do with the study of Zen? Even if you do obtain from him some trifling method, it will only be a thought-constructed dharma having nothing to do with Zen. Thus, Bodhidharma sat wrapped in meditation before a wall. He did not seek to lead people into having opinions. Therefore, it is written, to put out of mind even the principle from which action springs is the true teaching of the Buddhas, while dualism belongs to the sphere of demons. Your true nature is something never lost to you, even in moments of delusion, nor is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. It is the nature of Bhutatata. In it is neither delusion nor right understanding. It fills the void everywhere and is intrinsically of the substance of the one mind. How then can your mind created objects exist outside the void? The void is fundamentally without spatial dimensions, passions, activities, delusions, or right understanding. You must clearly understand that in it there are no things, no men, no Buddhas, for this void contains not the smallest hair's breadth of anything that can be viewed spatially. It depends on nothing and is attached to nothing. It is all pervading, spotless beauty. It is the self existent and uncreated absolute. Then how can it even be a matter for discussion that the real Buddha has no mouth and preaches no Dharma, or that the real hearing requires no ears, for who could hear it? Ah, it is a jewel beyond all price. I find that to be fascinating. Um, I read to you some time ago um, the teaching of Huang Po, um, when basically, he teaches non-dualism to the nth degree, um, and he basically teaches that, in a very Mahayana sense, that all dharmas are empty. They're all void. Um, and it really gives you something to really concentrate and meditate on, um, in a sense, that what we have to do is stop this um, differentiation that are constantly creating in our minds. We have to create this ability to stop value judgments, because when we give value judgments, it means we prefer one over another. We like one, we dislike another. We It continually separates us from our existence. And by that I mean the existence that we are just one with the cosmos. There is no I, as Huang Po was saying, and there is no you. It is just one. Um, it's very deep, and it really is something to meditate on and to concentrate on, to think about what he's saying there. Remind yourself when you do read his words, he is not talking about the mundane world. He is not talking about um, the relative. He's only talking about the absolute. Um, and it's the absolute that we have to be able to contemplate on and fathom in our minds. And when we do and we see that, that's when we begin to understand what the Buddhas understand. Um, I would really encourage you to read Huang Po. Read him in conjunction with, um, Senkan or Bodhidharma. Read him in conjunction with the ancient Taoist literature. Read him in conjunction with um, uh, the Blue Cliff Kongans. There's a lot there that when you read him and understand the way of thinking of these ancient Zen masters, um, you come to understand how they freed their minds. And when you do understand how they did it, then you can see their finger pointing how you can do it too. I find it fascinating. So, anyway, with that having been said, let's do our 15 minutes of a little bit of different meditation tonight. And then we'll call it quits for the night. But anyway, I invite you to this beautiful breathing bells, as it's called, from the Insight Timer app. I really like the Insight Timer app. I don't get paid by them to promote them. I like it. It works. It's very helpful for um, giving you guided meditation practice, or for just timing your own meditation. So it's very helpful. But this is a new one for me. I thought I would share it with you guys as we do it tonight. So without further ado, let's get to that. Well, I hope you guys found that as peaceful as I did. Very conducive to a peaceful meditation late in the evening like that. I hope it helps you sleep better at night. And yeah, a good mind clearing meditation is always good for for restful sleep. So uh, anyway, as we usually do each night, we end with the reading of the Bodhicitta prayer. Um, if you give me just a moment, I will pull that up and we will do that together. And so here we go, the Bodhicitta prayer. With a wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Enthused by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind for full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. That has become a bit of a habit for me with good intent. There's a bit of a saying in Five Mountains Zen as to the question that all bodhisattvas or, um, uh, true followers of the Buddha should ask another person is, how may I help you? Excuse me. And I think that's a wonderful question because it should show that our life is focused on teaching others and helping others when they need help and to alleviate their suffering. But I do find it a bit ironic to read the words of Huang Po as he takes a different slant towards this idealism of a bodhisattva and the bodhisattva idealism of Mahayanism. Um, and really encourages one to seek that one mind, which is not very different from the Theravada teaching of seeking one's own liberation. Uh, I find some interesting parallels there about freeing one's own mind. Um, so the more I study Huang Po, the more I have been inclined to drop this bodhicitta prayer at the end of my practice. Um, it's something I'm thinking about. I do like the Five Mountains Zen question, how may I help you? And that is the concept behind it. I'm sure that concept behind the question, how may I help you, is the bodhisattva ideal. But in understanding this original mind, um, it just makes me question why I do that, um, and why anyone does that understands uh, the teachings of Zen. So anyway, something I continue to meditate on and work out. Having said that, I hope I see you guys again tomorrow night, and have a wonderful evening. And I will be back to meditate again with you tomorrow. Thanks again for joining me, and good night.